Okay, so we're starting Part B. I'm down here on page 23 of 40 here. Part B, change tabs to the Amortization tab. As a reminder, let me go up here. This is part of, this should say Excel 2, Excel Module 2, Workshop 3, okay? So let me come, let's see, all the way back down here to this section. Change the tab to Amortization. We're at Part B, Overview. So the Rule of 78, it said, is great for investigating interest paid in the monthly payments of a one-year loan. But you really want to think about your options in more detail. For example, you may need a larger loan, you may be able to put some money down, you may be able to get a better interest rate, etc. To do more serious calculations, you decide you will prepare a loan amortization schedule or table. If you're foggy about amortization, you can review financial studies from your other classes, and there are many resources online. A couple of my favorites. One of them is Investopedia. I think you'll like that website. So I've pulled it up over here. What is amortization? Amortization is the paying off of a debt with a fixed repayment schedule in regular installments over a period of time. And it says, for example, with a mortgage or a car loan. So it's a fixed repayment schedule. We're paying constant amounts. The interest rate is not changing. This is everything is kind of steady, stable with this. And you can read through and find out more about all that. Another one of my favorite websites, and you can certainly look this up on your own. Let me go back to the instructions. Is Business Dictionary. Great website, Business Dictionary. So businessdictionary.com. In terms of other resources, also, there are a variety of instructional videos on YouTube. Now, there are many. You can, go to YouTube and search for amortization, maybe even Excel and amortization. I did find one video for you that you may want to look at, and I've got the web address here. If you download the instructions that I emailed to you and click on the link, then you can open it, or you can just type it, or I just type it right in. It says, then complete worksheet tab amortization as instructed below. Now, this is a warning to remind you that our worksheet, Blue Bistro-3, which you also saved with your last name, you are not Anna Apples, and so you would use your last name, right? You're not going to submit me a worksheet with Anna Apples. Why would you do that? But you're still working on it. Before, we were working in the Rule of 78's tab, and so we're making sure that we have changed over to this amortization tab. Okay, so that's what we're doing here, and that's just a reminder of that. On the new worksheet tab, it says we need to type our name, and of course, remember, capitalization matters. You want to respect yourself. So B1, ask for our name, and of course, my fictitious student is Anna Apples. But you wouldn't ask me for Anna Apples. You would never submit anything that says Anna Apples, because Anna Apples is a student name. You would put your name. Okay, let's go back to the instructions. In cell B9, type the amount of the loan. Now, actually at this point, what I'm asking you for in cell B9 is total cost, not actually the amount of the loan. So in other words, if you were going to buy a house, a $200,000 house, a $150,000 house, you might put that amount there. In our example, we're talking about something that's going to cost $3,000. So we would put that amount in. Now, in cell B10, I have the word down, and what I'm asking for there is a down payment. Let's again use the example of a house. If you were buying a $200,000 house, maybe you are able to come up with $20,000 on your own, $50,000 on your own, and that would be your down payment. And what that would mean if you came up with that money on your own is that you would not have to borrow as much. So right now for our $3,000 loan, we don't have a down payment, so we're going to enter 0 there. That's in the instructions, and we're just moving through the instructions. What do we want to do next? We want to enter the actual amount that we're going to borrow. That's the total cost of our $200,000 house or our $25,000 car, right? But in our case, we're borrowing $3,000 minus whatever we put the down payment. So in amount, we're going to enter a formula. All formulas start with an equal sign. The formula is the total cost minus the down payment. Now, why wouldn't we simply type $3,000 there? Because the more often we type the value of the loan, the more places we're going to have to go and change it if we decide to change the amount of the loan. I'm going to hit enter. So just with this limited amount here, we could change the amount of the loan. Maybe we are going to borrow $150,000 because maybe we're using the worksheet for something different later, right? Maybe we are able to come up with $25,000 as a down payment. You can just watch this. You don't have to do this part. But do you see how this is automatically changing? If I had instead, I'm going to undo, and we know the keyboard commands for undo, Control Z again. I would have to, if I didn't use formulas for this, I would have to go all over the place retyping that value. We only want to type a numeric value one time if at all possible, okay? Interest. Now, interest, it's set up here in the problem, 6%, right? So in cell B12, I'm going to type 6. I see the percent sign immediately is displayed for me. So that tells me that this cell was previously formatted with that percent formatting. You know, percent formatting in Excel is a little tricky because what we know is it's not the same as formatting something with commas or with a dollar sign, because those things don't change the value. A percent symbol changes the value. The number 6 is just the number 6, but 6% is the number 0.06. So this formatting is actually a mathematical function. I'm going to hit the enter key to go down to the next cell. In cell B13, it says how long do you want the loan, and it does specify in years. So our interest rate, that's an APR, an annual percentage rate. So that annual means year, and so here our time of the loan is in year. Currently, we are doing this in 12 monthly payments. In other words, we expect to repay the loan in 1 year. I'm doing this because I'm trying to set up the word problem to be exactly the same as the one that we worked on in the rule of 78. And we know that the rule of 78 is for a 1-year loan. But one of the things I want you to see in this amortization table is that we may change our mind, right? Later on, we may say that we can't pay it off in a year. We need to borrow a much bigger amount. We need to make smaller monthly payments. So maybe we can't pay it, you know, maybe we get we don't get 6% as an interest rate. Maybe we have a higher interest rate. Maybe we get a lower interest rate. Whatever variables change in our situation, we want to be able to modify that. And we can't do that with the rule of 78s, right? We can't suddenly say to the rule of 78s, well, I think this is going to be a 5-year loan, right? So that's one of the things that I want you to get out of this particular table. Okay, we're getting ready to move down to monthly payments, but let's return to our instructions. What have we done? We've done step 24. In cell B10, enter the amount of money you will give as a down payment. That was 0. In cell B11, you will calculate the amount owed using the formula and cell names. What I'm stressing there is, don't type the values. If you were just to type in $3,000, that's not a formula. That's not using cell names. So you followed me, you typed in a formula, right? Okay, and I'm telling you what that formula is, total cost minus down payment. Then in cell B12, we entered the annual interest rate, and that was 6%. In cell B13, we entered the duration of the loan in years, and that was 1 year. So now it says you will let Excel calculate the amount of the monthly payment. Excel has a built-in function that makes this easy, and the best way to use this formula is through, or to find that function, is through the formula wizard. And I'm showing you a picture of it here. I do try to put a lot of pictures in my instructions. So as you can see in the picture, I'm in cell, oops, that's cut off a little bit, B16, okay, next to where it says monthly payment. And then I come up here and I click on this little scripty f of x. This is the function, or what's called the insert function tool. And it's going to bring up this dialog box, the insert function dialog box. And it says, you know, that I can search for the payment function. If I don't see it, I may already see it. But let's walk through these steps before we continue on to these next instructions, okay? Go back to Excel. Here's Excel. Okay, so I know I want to calculate a monthly payment. I believe Excel can help me with that. So let's go up here to the F. I've got the cell selected, B16. Click in that cell. On the formula bar, click F of X. If you had no idea what you were looking for, you might type monthly payment or something like that, and either hit enter or click on go. Notice that's the only thing in the box, monthly payment. Now, let's pretend we're brand new to this. What I might do is click on several of these functions, and as I click on each one, I can read about it and determine if that's really what I want to do. Like, look at this. This is a PP payment. Returns the payment on the principal for a given investment based on a periodic constant payment and a constant interest rate. You know, I could actually kind of see where that could be possible. I payment returns the interest payment for a given period of an investment based on a periodic constant payment and a constant interest rate. Okay, see, there's all kinds, and honestly, folks, I'm going to tell you this because today's the first day of the rest of your life with Excel. Sometimes you do experiment with different functions. You say, okay, I think this one is exactly what I need, and it's not. And so, you know, you learn and you talk to people and you say, you know, what did you use? So, you know, this at least will help you get started. I'll also point out that down here at the bottom it has a help on this function. The online help for Excel functions is very good, okay? Now, I'm going to go back up to the top. I know the function that we're looking for is PMT. Calculates the payment for a loan based on a constant payment and a constant interest rate. That's the one I want, PMT. Once you get that, just double click it. As we open up this dialog box here, function arguments, what they mean by arguments is each one of these variables right here. They call them arguments. It's arguments to the function. Okay, in other words, values for the function, variables for the function. 3 of them are bolded, 2 are not. The ones that are bolded are required. I must put in values for anything that's bolded, an argument that's bolded. I do not have to put in values for these optional, unbolded ones. The first one says rate, and it says rate is the interest rate per period for the loan. But I love this. They give you an example. They say, for example, 6% divided by 4 for quarterly payments. Okay, what they're trying to explain here is that the 6% they're using in their example here, we're using it in our example also, is an APR, an annual percentage rate. Well, if I'm doing quarterly payments, I can't use an annual percentage rate. So in their example, a quarter is, you know, the 4 parts of a year, so they divided the yearly rate by 4. We're doing monthly payments, and so we know that our annual percentage rate must be divided by 12. And we can do that as part of the formula, right? And it's okay to type 12 because the number of months in a year is not going to change. We're not ever going to have to, you know, seek that out and update it later on. There's always going to be 12 months in a year. So I could type the value in. I find it easier to just come over here and click on cell B12. Then, that's annual interest. I need to divide by 12. And it's already figuring values out for me. Then I'm going to go down to this next one, NPER. NPER is the total number of payments for the loan. Now, we have to keep track of our units of measure because I know that I'm going to pay this off in 1 year. At least I think so, Maybe I change my mind. Maybe later on I pay it off in 2 years or 5 years or a 20-year house note, right? Because I can use this table for all kinds of things. So I'm starting out by putting in the 1-year value, but I know I need to convert this to months. The easiest way to convert this to months is to just multiply by 12 right there in the cell. All right, now I'm going to click in PV. PV is present value, the total amount that a series of future payments is worth now. Okay, well, we could explain a lot of things here, but we know we are going to borrow the amount minus any down payment, right? The amount of the item minus any down payment. So that's the value that we have in cell B11. And when I look at this, and I like to look at this and say, what is the answer getting ready to be? Well, up here it has a negative 258. Down here I see those parentheses again, meaning the formula result is going to be a negative value. So that would make me say something like, well, I'm going to make a payment every month of negative $258. And that's kind of weird. We would just say $258. So, you know, depending on how you're using this, what you're doing, you know from accounting, if I owe you something, that's a I'm in the hole, I'm in the red, right? I'm in a negative value. But for conversation purposes, I like for this to be a positive number, so I'm going to sneak in a negative sign. I really could do this anywhere, but right here on this present value, because I just don't want my values to be negative, and I can see it does not alter, and you would want to check for that. You know, it doesn't alter the values. Now, my future value, the type is a logical value, blah, blah. I'm going to skip those. I don't need them. Going to skip them. Okay, so before we go on, let's just kind of catch up with the instructions here. So, well, actually, let's just look at what we've done. What I know right now is that if I borrow $3,000, I borrow $3,000, 6% interest rate for a 1-year loan, my monthly payment is $258.20. That's what it's going to take to pay off the loan. Now, you know, with our rule of 78s, we kind of guesstimated some of those things. And so, you know, we said, well, I think I can pay $265. And so we kind of had to look at that. Well, in my amortization table, I'm just going to start off by being a little bit more precise. Maybe I could have done this with the rule of 78s to find out what my monthly payment was going to be. Okay. Now, my question, let's go back to the instructions. I want you to feel comfortable we're following through. So I'm going from page 24 on to page 25. Here are those values on the instructions. And here's where I'm explaining why I inserted that little negative sign there. Now we're talking about cell B17. And it says you're going to calculate the total amount of the loan. And that might be a little confusing because you may be thinking to yourself, but we know the amount of the loan. It's $3,000 and we did calculate it. Well, what I'm talking about right here is if I borrow $3,000, I'm going to end up paying more than $3,000 because I have to pay the amount of the principal, the $3,000, plus any interest rate. So if I pay it off in 12 months, it's going to be my monthly payment times 12. If I pay it off in 24 months, it's going to be my monthly payment times 24, right? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. So it says you will calculate the amount of the loan. In other words, when the loan is fully paid, how much money did you actually pay back, interest plus principal? The formula is simply the monthly payment times 12, okay? Enter the formula by entering, hang on just a second. Okay, sometimes with these longer videos, little interruptions happen, so I'm back. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go back to our spreadsheet, and in the total amount of the loan, all formulas start with an equal sign, and I know it's going to be this monthly payment. Now, what's that going to be times? Well, I know it's going to be multiplied by something, so let me go ahead and put my multiplication. And in cell B13, I'm going to click on that, but remember that's in years. And so I need to multiply that by 12. Okay, now, You may have heard of please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, which is a way to keep track of the order of operations. In other words, minus signs and division symbols and what happens first, right? And there's an order. Things in parentheses always happen first. Please excuse. Exponents always happen next. Please excuse my. M is for multiplication. Okay. Well, sometimes parentheses just help us understand stuff. If I came back to this formula much later on, it might just be confusing. B16, okay, B13, what am I doing here? Why? So parentheses might help me later on to make it a little more clear. So that's the only reason I'm inserting them here. Make it a little bit clear that this part is to a specific objective, right? This part right here is for the purpose of saying this is my monthly payments. So B16 times B13 times 12. That's it. I'm hitting enter. Okay. Now, here's what this is telling me. I am borrowing $3,000, but I have to pay back not just the $3,000 but interest, and so it looks like if I pay it back in 1 year's time that I'll be paying $3,098. Now, you know, I like this, but let's do this. What if I borrowed, I'm going to buy that $200,000 house. You can just watch this, you don't have to do this, right? I got a look at my monthly payment. Woo, if I'm going to pay that back in a year, right? I'm going to put a down payment of $25,000. My interest rate is going to be 10%. Wow, you see these numbers adjusting? If not, rewind and look at that again. A house note, something like that, let's say my goal is to pay it off in 15 years. Because everything in this spreadsheet is looking at these numbers. I haven't had to retype things. I can start to see how that's going to influence. Look, on a $200,000 house, I'm going to actually end up paying at a 10% interest rate with $25,000 down, $338,500. So really, I'm only borrowing $175. Look at how much I'm paying back, right? Well, how do I know that, you know, these formulas are calculating correctly? Remember that you can switch from displaying the results to displaying the formulas by holding the control key down on your keyboard, and keep that control key held down and then lightly tap the key that is underneath escape and to the left of the number 1. So on the very left hand side of your keyboard, if you'll find the escape key in the upper left corner, immediately below that is a little squiggly that's like a tilde, and it also on that key is a little, it looks like an apostrophe kind of. Okay, that's the key. So control, press that once, it displays the formulas. Press it again, it goes right back to the view. So as you start to look at your formulas, you can see everything is consistently being, you know, converted to months, and you know, and is based on these cell values. And you could go through and spot check each one of these. Okay, so you get the idea. Let me go back. Let me get right back to where we were, because this was just something 0 down payment. We had a 6% interest rate. We're paying it off in 1 year. And so we're seeing very clearly, and that's the purpose of these numbers, is so that you can see this is what I'm doing. Okay, back to the instructions. Oh, have we saved? We haven't saved in a while. Let's save. You can either click the floppy disk, you can press Control S on your keyboard. A benefit of using those keyboard shortcuts is that it keeps your hands on the keyboard. That's faster, and it makes you more accurate when you return to typing. All right, so I've saved. Probably need to fill out this next part, but let's get back to the instructions. So we did cell, and I'm sorry, that was cell, what cell is that? Cell B18 is what we're looking for. Okay, so we did cell B17. We finished this instruction. Now we're going to cell B18. You will calculate the total interest amount, which is simply the total amount of the loan, which we just calculated in cell B17, minus the amount of the original loan, which is found in cell B11. So I'm telling you everything here. It's B17 minus B11. Enter that into cell B18. So what do we say? B17 minus B11. All formulas start with an equal sign. Here's the total amount of the loan, B17, minus the amount that we borrowed, B11. So here's how much interest I'm going to be paying back. Right, and you can see that pretty clearly, $98.39. That's okay. We're letting Excel do all of our math. Let's go to the next step. Enter the values 1, 2, 3 into cells A21, 22, 23 respectively, and then use the autofill handle, as you learned on the earlier part of the exercise, to autofill the numbers through 12 to represent the 12 months of the year. Okay, well that sounds straightforward enough. Let's go over to cell A21. And it looks like, just like we did with the rule of 78, we're going to number these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. With numbers, you have to give Excel a little bit of a pattern. Are you counting by ones, by twos, by fives, by hundreds? Excel can do all of that if you just give it a pattern to follow. That pattern typically requires 3 pieces of information. So 1, 2, 3. As I've entered those, I now need to select them. Now, this is where, folks, you got to pay attention to whether you're selecting or copying or moving or dragging. Okay, it matters, so pay attention. Get the puffy white plus sign and press and drag over just those 3 numbers. What I see a lot of students do is this. I don't know what you're doing there. You're selecting all these cells. You're not paying attention. Select the pattern. Right there you go. Select the pattern. So I've got those cells. Now that I have those cells, I need to tell Excel to fill in through the number 12. Now, I know that you can double click this autofill handle, but what is going to tell it where to stop? How does it know where to stop counting? It doesn't. So this is where you really need to get your mouse right over that green square in the corner. Not here, not here, not here, not here, not here, not here. Get it? Here. Press on that mouse button and drag until Excel, see how it shows you over there next to my mouse? I'm counting to 12. There you go. Once I get there to 12, release my mouse button. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There we go. Okay, let's go back to the instructions. In cell B21, you need to repeat the initial amount of the loan. This amount has already been typed on the spreadsheet, and you do not ever want to type the same thing twice, because for the rest of your life you're going to struggle to update it in all locations. So the amount of the loan is in cell B11. So in cell B21, you're going to type the most simple formula ever. B11 equals B11. Right? That way you don't have to retype the amount. You could, sure, you could go all over it if you remember to do it, and don't ever forget or it's going to screw everything up, right? Just let Excel do it for you. So we're going to go back into Excel. In cell B21, beginning balance, we want this value to appear. So I have cell B21 selected, equals B11. Voila. See how that works? Now if I change my loan amount, let me just demonstrate, you don't have to do this, $10,000, 10, 1, 2, 3. See how it changed everywhere that everything needed to change? And I didn't have to worry about doing that. Control Z. That undo, in other words. Back to the instructions. Where am I at? I just did this step here, just did step 34. Now we're on to step 35. Now you need to repeat the monthly payment. You would never, again, you do not ever need to type it. Instead, you simply enter the formula of that cell, in other words, equal and the cell name. But let's think about this. The monthly payment will be the same for all 12 months. We know that we are going to copy this formula. This is what we're saying. Let's just stop and think for a minute. Here's our monthly payment. We're going to type that monthly payment here. We're going to need that monthly payment here. Just as soon as we repeat that, we're going to copy it down to the other cells. Well, that means that I already know that if I put cell B16 right here, and then I copy it, it's going to go B17, B18, B19, right? So I need to make it absolute. I'd have to put dollar signs. Why don't we make it more clear than that? We know that Excel, that we will need to change that to an absolute reference. So look what it's telling us. Go ahead and change that and put those dollar signs in, right? Here's what we need to do. Let's go back. I'm going to type equal in cell C21. All formulas start with an equal sign. I'm going to click on B16. But again, I know I'm getting ready to copy this, and it's going to keep changing this, B17, B18, B19, B20. If you don't believe me, try it. So I need to modify this. I'm going to click before the B and type a dollar sign, and I'm going to click before the number 16. You have to do both. Folks, it's so weird to interrupt the cell name. You kind of see that as sacred. Well, surely I can't type just in the middle of it. You have to. Otherwise, it's not going to stick on row 16. So $B, $16, enter. Now, go back and select, not copy, not drag, select that cell. Once you have the cell selected, you can get that autofill handle and drag. Of course, now it kind of knows where your, how many months that you have, right? I'm going to leave this for just a minute. Let me see. I might be copying all this at once. Okay, yeah. So for right now in cell C21, I'm just going to type that. On to step 36. In cell, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it. In cell D21, let's think about how we calculate the money we will spend on monthly interest. And that's key, monthly interest. Well, it's simply the beginning balance, which is found in cell B21. What's cell B21? Beginning balance, right? Labeled right there. Multiplied by the monthly interest rate, which is absolutely, and I'm saying that because I'm teasing you with an absolute reference, which is absolutely found in cell B12. It says, wait, B12 is annual interest. Don't forget to divide by 12 to get that monthly interest. So the beginning balance multiplied by the annual rate divided by 12. Let's see if we can do that. Monthly interest rate. All formulas start with an equal sign. It's the, oops, what did I say there? What are we doing? Cell D21, right? I want to make sure that I'm getting following my instructions to the letter because I had trouble with this before. So, okay, so the beginning balance multiplied, let me do my multiplication sign, by the monthly interest rate. Okay, here's the 6%, but we know that's for the year, divided by 12 to get the monthly interest rate. Okay, now I'm looking at my printout of the instructions because I could press the enter key and this one formula would be correct, but I'm thinking ahead and the instructions are helping you to do that. Excuse me. So if I get ready to copy this, you know, maybe all of these values to the next row, well, it's going to go from B21, my beginning balance, to B22. That's okay, because my beginning balance is going to change. So I'm okay with that. And it's going to change cell B12 from B12 to B13. Okay, little bit of a problem there. I need to make sure that B12 stays B12 because that's where my annual interest rate is. So to lock that cell, see it? I'm locking that cell onto cell D21, hit enter. Okay? That's the interest I'm paying in that month. And because I set that formula up correctly in anticipation that it's going to be copied, I feel good about this. Now, what would happen if I didn't pay attention to that and I copied it? well, I'm going to get a lot of errors in my formula, and I would just have to fix it later on. Okay? So, sometimes that's what you do. A big part of working with formulas in Excel is fixing those formulas, correcting them when they're wrong. Have we saved? We haven't saved in a while. Let's click on Save. Control S. All right, so what cell was that? That was cell D21, right? Yeah, D21. Okay, so we're moving on to this next step, step number 37. It says it would be nice to know how much of our payment will be applied to the principal. We were just figuring out our monthly interest. Now we want to know principal. So in the cell E21, enter the formula to subtract the monthly interest from the monthly payment. This is kind of where things, when I demonstrated this in class, I ran into a little trouble because I wasn't keeping up with what's monthly and what's yearly, and sometimes hard to do when you're walking around the class talking and trying to explain. So, give you another suggestion for yourself. As you go through the instructions, just put a little check mark out here. Underline things so that you can read it carefully, methodically, and just walk right through it. And then here's another big tip. Don't be a data entry person. You don't need to go to college to do what somebody else tells you, type the number here. Push back and say, what am I doing? What did I just calculate, right? We've been trying to do that with these examples to understand what's being calculated, what's changing, why are we doing this, and so that's very important on that, right? Okay, so I've talked too much, I forgot what I was doing. In step 37 there, it says, so in cell E21, we want to enter the formula to subtract monthly interest from the monthly payment. All right, all formulas start with an equal sign. We know the monthly payment is going to be in this cell right here, cell C21, and we're going to subtract from that the monthly, so subtract monthly interest. Now, before I press enter, let's just think. I know I'm going to copy this to each subsequent row to fill in my table. Is it okay if cell C21 becomes cell C22? I think so. When I copy this down to the next line, yeah, that'd be the monthly payment for that month. Well, how about for cell D21, this monthly interest, to be the monthly interest for the next month, D22? Yep, that looks all right. So I could press enter, but I know I'm going over there to that next cell ending balance, so I'm going to press tab. That's another way to tell Excel you're done, either enter or tab. All right, let's go back to the instructions, and I think, what are we on? Step 38. Now you must calculate the ending balance. This describes the principal of the loan, what's left on that loan, right? Recall that some of your money was applied to the principal, but some was applied to interest. So your ending balance is the beginning balance, which is in cell B21, minus the principal, which we just calculated in cell E21. So here we go. All formulas start with an equal. We borrowed $3,000 minus our the part that was applied to principal. That was the amount that was applied to principal. B21 minus E21. Enter. Now, when I pressed enter, you may notice that Excel did not go down to the next line. It knew I was over here a minute ago, so it went there. Sometimes, if you're really fast and you're typing along tab, 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 when you do press enter, Excel can be smart enough to pick up the pattern and take you back to the next open cell. So that's why it did that. All right, let's think about what just happened. We had a beginning loan balance. We said to the bank, give us $3,000. We said we're going to pay, and the bank maybe told us you're going to have to pay $258.20 because we're saying it's going to be a one-year loan. You said okay, and in that first payment, didn't we pay $15 in interest? Folks, let's think about this for just a minute. What did the rule of 78s tell us we were going to pay? Just about 15%, didn't it? You know what's cool about this? This is a great, I call it down and dirty. You're in the restaurant, you're writing on a napkin, you're trying to do this on your cell phone because you're in conversation with somebody. You're trying to make a very quick and rough calculation. And that's pretty good, right? Pretty precise. But with our amortization table, we have a lot more control over all these individual elements, and we're a little more precise. We're seeing exactly this is how much of a $258.20 payment. Now our payment was different over here, you know, right? So anyway, we're seeing exactly how much we're paying. Ending balance. Okay, let's save. We haven't saved in a while. Let's save. Go back to the instructions. Save your work. We just did that. Verify that your formulas are correct and that your values make sense. Just a little more work to do. For month number 2, your beginning balance is exactly the ending balance from month 1. So enter that formula in cell B22 to display the value in F21. So this is what we're doing. Come over here. Equals F21. Isn't our beginning balance for the next month simply the ending balance from the previous month? Press enter. Okay? Now, let's go back to the instructions. Getting ready to copy the formula from cell C21 to cell C22. And you see that I'm getting ready to do that for D, for E, and for F. Now, what I'm asking you to do is to copy just down one row, because what I'm doing is I'm forcing you to check your work, okay? So what you can do, you can either pick these one at a time and copy it down, or select puffy white plus sign, select all 4 of these values. Oops. Now use the autofill handle, copy down just one row. Now, we've started to fill in our table, and at this point, if you see any errors, you need to stop and fix them. Because, for example, maybe right here you have 0. That could indicate that when you copied this formula down, that you did not make this an absolute reference. Maybe you only put $B and you didn't put a $ before the 12, right? So whatever the mistake is, I'm going to hit escape on my keyboard because it thinks when you click on that formula bar, if you start clicking around, you got to be really careful because it can modify your formulas. So hitting escape on your keyboard is a safe way. In fact, you can hit it a whole bunch of times and just kind of get out of any editing that you might accidentally be in. All right, so if you see any errors in these formulas, this is the time to clean it up. That's really what I'm pushing you to do in those instructions. Now we're going to do a lot of copying all at once. We're going to select the cell range B22 through F22, and we're going to use the autofill handle on the selection box to copy the formulas from this range to the end of the table. In other words, we're going to fill it all out. Here we go. Select. I'm going to just scroll a little so you can see. I'm going to get my fill handle. You may be able to double click. You may want to drag. The reason you can double click is because you've numbered these months. And so it says, okay, just go as far as the last piece of data, and it fills it out. Now, let's look at our table. Our beginning balance is steadily, steadily, steadily decreasing. The amount that we're paying towards interest, 15, 13, 12, 11, right? Pretty close. I mean, this is almost 13. So you see how that's, I mean, that's pretty close to what that's saying, right? Nice basis of comparison. What's happening with my principal? Well, I am applying, it looks like my principal is going up. That means because more of my monthly payment is being applied to the principal. Ending balance is going down, 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 until finally I owe nothing. Isn't that cool? Now, save, 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 save. And you can watch, if you want to experiment with yours, you can. Just make sure you go back to the saved copy. You said this was a great, really fun in-class exercise. Woohoo, it's done. I got my grade. I don't care. But then you start thinking about that house that you want. You say, I think I'm going to spend $150,000 on that house. I think I can come up with a $20,000 down payment. Now, I don't want you to be scared by these hashtags, because you know that simply means the column is not big enough. We've talked about that in previous chapters. You say, well, for that house rate, goodness, what kind of interest can I get? Maybe I get a 10%, 12%, 8% loan, whatever it is. I don't know. Let's put 8%. Well, you're not going to pay a house off in 1 year. Well, I'm not. You might be able to, but I know I'm not. So let's say this is going to be a 30-year loan. So 30 years. My monthly payment is going to be a little less than $1,000. And I can see, and now I would have to, what else would I have to do? Well, I'd have to expand this table because right now I'm not paying this down to zero. This is just showing me my first year. Maybe I would have to go through because what is this? Is 30 years. So this is the one manual adjustment, okay, that you would have to make. 30 years, 30 times 12, right? But you could just keep, I'm not going to do all 30 years, but you could keep on copying this to see how it works, right? See how that, it's decreasing. See my principal? The formulas are still working. I just have to expand the table. So you could certainly do this. Now, that made me think of something. And, one of the things that we did, I'm going to Control Z to undo that until I get back to my regular 12-month table. One of the things that I did when we started is I had you put the monthly payment on each row of this spreadsheet, because what I'm assuming is that the monthly payment is the same. I didn't have to do this. We could have just made all of our formulas reference this monthly payment in cell B16, right? There was no need to put this into our spreadsheet and repeat. I mean, we didn't type the values, but there really wasn't any need to repeat this data, except for this. What if you worked some overtime this month? Instead of putting $953.89, you write a check for $1,000. This would allow you to modify, let's just pick a cell. I'll pick this one. I'm in C24, and I can do $1,000. See how it updated? It decreased. It applied a little bit more to the principal there, right? In fact, let me undo that. Before, if I just paid the regular amount, I'm only putting $88 towards the principal. But now, if I up that to $1,000, a big chunk of that difference, because it was like $50, went to the principal. See how all that went to the principal? And that's good because it changes my ending balance, which changes my beginning balance. So I'm going to be paying less money into interest, and I'm going to be able to pay it off earlier. So you could actually keep track of this, and then maybe at the end of the month you say this was paid. Maybe this is I'll do this. Maybe this is a column where you say this was paid, and you record the date and all that kind of stuff, right? So that you keep track, and you'll be able to tick it off until I'm Control Z to keep undoing until you've paid off that loan. Again, if this becomes more than a 1-year loan, just add more months, right? That's all you got to do so that you can track that monthly. And I'm going to go back, undo that, and undo this, and undo that, and undo that, and undo that, and undo that. Okay, so just a lot of undos there. But I really, this is one of the points of this exercise, folks, is that I want you to have this as a tool that you can use. So let's go back to the instructions. Everything should calculate to zero. We saved our work. I do ask you to compare this to your monthly interest rate that we did with the rule of 78. What are the similarities? What are the differences? And I hope you see that. This is now let's enjoy the benefits, and so I showed you that. We started to manipulate these numbers. We talked about the down payment in the work and all of that kind of stuff. Now, I do ask you to save it as a PDF and then to close the PDF and to close Excel completely. So I'm going to make sure I've done, I can't remember at what point I saved this, so I am going to save it. And I'm going to give you one other thing. Let's say you are working with a sister, a brother, a cousin, a child, a daughter, a son, and you want to teach them some responsibility. So you want to print this off. Well, you could print it off as an Excel spreadsheet, or you want to email it to them. and they don't know anything about Excel. It would just confuse them for you to send this Excel spreadsheet. They might accidentally delete stuff that they shouldn't delete, but your point is that this is going to be a way that they can tick off, put a little check mark next to things and say, I just paid this. Maybe you want them to keep up with when they made those payments to you on each one of these, right? Okay, File, Save As. I'm saving into this folder here. And remember, in this very busy dialog box, an important feature is Save As Type. And you can click on this drop down box, and man, you can save this in so many different ways, but what I'm asking you to do is save as PDF. Okay, I like to change this to minimum. I'm not worried about backwards compatibility and things like that. I do like to open it after I've created it. There are more options that you can explore, and I encourage you to do that and click on Save. What a nice spreadsheet. And again, you know, let's say you did do this for a home loan. Print this out, put it in your file folder with all your other important documents, and keep a running checklist, right? So that you can have the party when you've paid off that 30-year loan or that 15-year loan. But that's your PDF. All right? Okay. So that brings us to the end of our instructions. Here we are with these instructions for how you would submit this. And I'll be talking to you more later, but I appreciate it, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you.